Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Clark-Smith podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today by Jordan Lawrence, founder and CEO of Damisa. Um, Jordan, you've got an interesting background to say the least, from kite surfing businesses to recruitment to building in fintech. For those people that don't know you, perhaps give a little bit of an introduction to yourself. Because you left school at what, 15, 16?
Yes, I was left school very early. My father was a singer on the cruise ships, so I spent a lot
Hmm.
of time traveling around the world as a kid. We moved to various different places and grew up always pretty much near the beach. So was into the surfing and the windsurfing and all the rest of it at a very early age. Um, and yeah, I was teaching water sports for quite some time since from the age of about 15. Started a surf shop when I was about 21, something like this. And then very quickly made a online surf shop, which became quite a big situation all across Europe. Um,
Well,
I think it was one of the first of its kind.
starting a surf shop in the UK is probably not the best weather for it
You
either.
say that, but it's very windy, right? And on the south coast of England, where it was in Poole, yeah, it's a very windy place, and there's some good spots around there. And of course, it's not too far from London, so you got a lot of people
Hmm.
coming down from London wanting to learn to kite surf when that first came around at the end of the 90s and things like that. So it was a very interesting time. But yeah, because of that, I set up this online surf shop very early in the e-commerce boom, let's say just after the dot-com bubble, if anyone remembers that but now. Um, and yeah, so it was unusual time to start anything online, but it was kind of the boom time. Um, and then got into that, and it became quite a big surf shop across Europe, online again, one of the first ones. And then I had this random background of e-commerce people. I think back then there was only a handful of payment options that were
Hmm.
even possible online, PayPal being one of them, and people offering Visa and Mastercard were not that many. I think it was Bibit back in the day before it became WorldPay, before it
Yeah.
became whoever else. Those same guys obviously went off and started Adyen. So yeah, that I sold back in when was that? 2006. I moved to the Netherlands. Um, my girlfriend was Dutch at the time. I met her. I think I taught her to kite surf.
Ah.
And then basically the Netherlands, the payment boom happened in sort of 2008, where Adyen started in 2007. WorldPay moved there. Worldline moved there from France, opened a head office, and so suddenly all these payment people were moving to the Netherlands. Um, so the logical thing after a surf shop, of course, is a recruitment company, right? Yeah, to piece together this random network of of e-commerce people that I knew, and then with all these companies starting up all over the place, it was a very interesting situation to start a fintech company.
Hmm.
And what better place than Amsterdam when when all the talent was there? But the problem was when I started PCN, which was doing a lot of consulting, recruitment, staffing, media strategies for the fintech industry. The problem was like you can't really go and start a payment company in Amsterdam because suddenly you're in competition
Yeah.
with all your customers. So it wasn't a good thing to do. So it happened quite late. Basically, then the regulation changed around PSD2, um, and open banking emerged. And Tom Greenwood, who was a client of PCN with a company called IFX, which he founded before, big FX company in London, came to me and said, "Look, you know everybody in the payment space. I got this idea around open banking. Do you want to get involved?" And I said, "Okay, sounds like a good idea." And we built Vault. And that was great. So PCN, because it'd grown up with the fintech industry, we had a fantastic network. And I managed to bring in the board, the founding team, Stefan Vollert, who was at the time on assignment at G2A, I believe, in Poland. So we found the founding team and brought on the board of advisors and built Vault from there. Stepped out of there about 6 months ago after growing the company in Australia, um, and started Damisa, which is what I believe the future stablecoin payments. Everybody's getting into it now, but I like to think I was in there early with the concept. So yeah, I think we're building something which is very relevant for the market right now.
definitely a hot topic. Stable coins. We saw Stripe recently announce their stable coin facilities as well, and I suppose it moves away from almost the uncertainty that comes with crypto, having it tagged to actual currencies as well. I'm really curious how that conversation with Tom came about. I know you said he was a client, but obviously from a recruitment sort of partner consulting type of background compared to running the business, it's not often you see those kind of combinations come into place. But so tell me how that sort of came about. Was it
Yeah,
Tom
no. So I
leading it?
mean,
Was it a sort of mutual idea over dinner? What? Yeah.
no, Tom. I mean, the idea evolved, right? Tom very much had this idea of um, taking advantage of the new regulation, the PSD2 situation that was going on in Europe, and creating a payment method,
Mm,
right? And then obviously we've had Ideal in the Netherlands for a very long time, and Ideal is their local bank-to-bank payment method. So then, it very quickly evolved into, okay, let's look at Ideal and let's see how we can make that better, make kind of ideal for the whole world. And then that very much over a breakfast with one of the board members of Volt evolved into, look, let's plug in all the account-to-account payment methods in the world and kind of be this single orchestration platform of account-to-account payment methods. And I think that's how that came around. But you know, you know yourself, being in the recruitment industry, the resilience you need to be in
mm.
recruitment for some time is, I think, very special. Let's put it like that. And the amount of grind and grit you need to make a successful recruitment company is, yeah, kind of next level, right? And I think from my background, teaching water sports for so long, especially the time I spent in the UK teaching it, like, you're standing in a wetsuit for 10 hours a day in Poole Harbour. I mean, there's no bank holidays off, there's no weekends off. You're working hard. People are down the pub at 10 o'clock. You're cleaning off the wetsuits for the next day for the school. Um, when I came to Amsterdam and suddenly was working in an office in a suit, having weekends and bank holidays off, I thought, okay, this is how the other half have been living. But I think the work ethic was instilled there, and I took that into the recruitment space, which was kind of the same sort of thing, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Grind on until the kind of job is done. And if you look at Tom's background in the foreign exchange businesses in the 90s, it's the same, right?
yeah.
Very hard, very competitive market, very cutthroat industry. Um, so we were kind of cut from the same cloth in that respect. And when Tom came forward and said, "Look, should we get involved in this idea?" I thought, okay, if I look at the payments industry as it is now, it was always a situation where you didn't really have to work that hard, if I may say, to be a success because there wasn't that much competition. There wasn't such a hard grind. And so I thought, like I said to Tom, if we can take this kind of work ethic from the FX and recruitment space, put it into the payment business, we can probably make quite an impact here. And then we agreed, and off we went. And Stefan is always someone I've had a huge amount of respect for.
Mm.
Very, very early into Adyen, made a big impact on that business, and again, extremely hard worker. So when it came to finding our tech guy and third co-founder, he was the obvious choice.
Absolutely. And was there any, I suppose, difficult pangs of leaving behind your business? I mean, obviously you'd exited the surf business you're already, but a second one. I mean, I know what it's like. It's kind of your baby. There's an emotional pang with leaving it behind, almost giving it to someone else. It's like your child leaving home.
I must have some sort of soulless or cold, frozen heart because I don't feel like that.
No.
I felt like PCM was one of those things. I grew up. Rogier, who's now the CEO, a fantastic guy, doing a great job. Um, was basically the first employee of
Mm.
PCN. It was called the Payments and Cards Network back then. And when I was building it, I always thought, like, if he stays around, which I hope he did, and he did, which is great, he would always going to be the CEO. And then it becomes about the team that you're building the business for, right? Not so much about you anymore. And I think the whole plan was I didn't want to be running the business. I wanted to be working on the business, not really in the business. And therefore, very early, I decided to separate from there and build a business that was sellable. So I didn't feel like it was my baby that I was kind of giving
Mm.
away. And same thing for Volt, right? I think Volt was one of those companies where it's a great business run by an amazing team. And at one point, when I left Volt, there was 300 people there. And I'm like, I love starting businesses. I like building things. Do I like being in an almost corporate situation? Not
Mm.
really, right?
No.
Um, I like getting in, understanding problems, trying to solve problems, and then going there. So it was the same thing with Volt. That's an amazing business. I'm sure it will do very well under Stefan's leadership. Is there a place for me in a 300-man company that I can contribute as much as I can in a 10-man company? Not really, right? So then the logical choice is to move on.
What was the biggest thing you learned from Tom? Obviously, he was the CEO, you were, chief growth officer. What did you learn from him in terms of that time at Volt?
So Tom is we're quite different people. So it's a great question. I think what the main thing I learned from him, uh, the guy is, like a dog with a bone. He will, if he has an idea and he wants to achieve it, that guy will achieve it. And so he will be very much, the idea is mine. Let's do this. He won't take no for an answer, and he'll run and run and run and run until that job is done. Or sometimes I may be a bit like, okay, let's get people involved. Let's have a democratic vote about this idea. Should we do it? Shall we not? So probably since I've known Tom, I've become a lot more like, okay, this is the idea. We're going for this. Trust in yourself. Trust in my own knowledge that this is the right path. There's no democracy. Let's just get on and do it. But I think somewhere in the middle is the balance, and he probably would say the same about me. He's probably learned to be a bit more democratic. So hopefully we've contributed to each other in that respect.
So tell me about Damisa, your new business. How did that idea come about? Of course, we're talking about stablecoins and escrow services, but yeah, give me the background.
So I've probably been in this stablecoin space for around 3 years, which is quite a long time for the stablecoin world. Um, and whilst I was at Volt, you know, I always had the idea that we are linking up domestic payment rails. So we are integrating and orchestrating account to account payments, and it's always going to be domestic. So if you want to pay in euro, it's going to be euro to euro. If you're going to pay in pound, it's going to be pound to pound, dollar to dollar, whatever currency you're in, it's always going to be a domestic transaction. And then when the stablecoin ideas first came around, I thought about a global checkout, right?
Mm.
I thought, can we bring together these account to account payment methods via stablecoins and kind of make a global checkout where, if at the moment I want to make a payment, let's say I'm in the Netherlands and I want to buy a pair of shoes in New York, right? So the merchant is in New York, I'm in the Netherlands, and I want to use my bank account. Right now, I can't, right? I've got PayPal, Amex, Visa, MasterCard. These are my options. Um, if you can link up account to account with stablecoins, suddenly your bank account becomes an international payment option as well. So what the customer sees on the front end is the pair of shoes. What's happening in the back end is they're buying stablecoins. It's being off-ramped to the merchant in New York, and they're sending the pair of shoes exactly the same. You could even put an escrow style service in the middle, which means that when the shoes are delivered to the person in the Netherlands, it's delivered. You can link into the DHL API if you want, or just trust the customer. They say they got the shoes, you release the funds to the merchant. Kind of like PayPal did back in the day, but then even more secure because it's on the blockchain. So this was the idea I had ages ago, a global checkout. I think it's still a good idea. I think someone's still going to do it if they're not already. But the escrow thing I couldn't leave alone, right? I think the ultimate use case for stablecoins is the ability to issue a wallet per transaction, keep the money in what is like an escrow service effectively, right? In antitrust corridors. And then when the goods have arrived the other end, especially in a B2B context where there's hundreds of thousands of dollars per transaction going on or millions of dollars per transaction going on, your money's safe in the escrow. You release the funds when the goods have been delivered to the buyer. And then there's no risk of chargeback, there's no risk of fraud, it's all on the blockchain. So that was the idea of Damisa. As a side note, we can basically do international remittances, global payouts, because it's all on stable coins. We can do these smart contracts on escrow services, as I say, and that's the main focus right now. Yeah, and it's extremely popular. It's. I mean, because the market is already using stable coins en masse, it's not the same education piece that we had with Volt, right? So
Mm.
I'm getting 10, 15 calls a day to use Demisa. Right? There's no outgoing marketing yet, and we're only 3 months old, right? So it's crazy.
I mean, you mentioned the education piece. I know we talked about it before, recruitment, there's an education piece. Volt, there was a massive education piece, probably longer than you anticipated, but it seems now you've kind of hit on a sweet spot where there's an awareness already. It's more we've almost the market's been waiting for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the market is, especially when it comes to cross-border payments, the market has been overcharged for a very long time. If somebody wants to use a Swift transfer, I've had it myself. Like sometimes money just goes missing, right? It can be, and happened to me for months. It's another story to dive into another time. But Swift transactions can just go missing. There's a lot of fraud
Mm,
going on, and there's very high transaction costs. So stablecoins, I think, is to your point, people have been waiting for something like this for a long time. Um, but the reality is, you know, internationally, you've had the euro dollar for so long,
yeah,
which is basically dollars outside of the US. And now, since Circle pegged USDC to the US dollar, you basically can say that it can replace the euro dollar, right? And it's programmable money. So it becomes a lot more accessible. So whilst people have been waiting for it, I think it's been there. It's just been very expensive.
yeah.
So now, it's kind of that easy transition of like, look, this is the same as you've already been using, just a tenth of the price.
Obviously, talking about that, there's a lot of noise around petrodollar and obviously Trump is Trump. Do you think there's risks around
Donald
some
Trump? No, no, no. What could possibly go wrong?
regulation and things like that in terms of stable coins?
I mean, it's always the thing, right? With something new, I think there has to be some kind of regulation. In many countries across Africa, across Asia, across LATAM, there's still no real regulation around cryptos, the same as there are with fiat currencies, right? So I think regulation has to come, and then maybe it gets more expensive. Um, yeah, but for now, as long as it's pegged one-to-one to a G3 currency, your stablecoin, I think the risk is very low. But yeah, I definitely think regulation can be a risk to the entire industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the name Damisa, it's cheater as far as I understand it. Where did that come from?
So, given the fact that we're on stablecoins, the potential for the speed of international payment is huge, right? So I really believe we can make the fastest international payment on the planet, and the cheetah is the fastest land animal. When we're looking at names, I'm always fascinated by these kind of West African dialects or African dialects. And there's some beautiful words in there. So I thought, like, what is the fastest land animal? Okay, it's the cheetah. Let's try and find the word in a West African dialect, and that was Damisa. The fastest animal is some sort of marlin, right?
Yes,
Which
yeah.
didn't have the same ring to it. So I thought, I thought
Blue
let's go with the
Marlin, I
land
think it
animal.
is, or something like
So
that.
yeah, it
Yeah,
is like I think that the marlin is the fastest creature, but yeah, there was no nice word for the marlin.
yeah.
Some generic word which didn't make any sense. So yeah,
And obviously, I think we've talked about this before. A lot of the payments and fintech world has been going local. But this is very much global in scale, and I suppose going against the grain. Um, do you think that's an opportunity just because it hasn't been done yet, or the historical rails that have been around have been owned by big institutions which are technology averse, very, very backwards in terms of innovation and slow moving, and that's the opportunity.
I think so. Yeah, and like the adoption of crypto generally around the world is obviously gone crazy. Um, 10, 15 years ago, it was very hard to buy any cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever. And I think there was no hope in trying to use stable coins because it was just far too clunky. So, given the nature of the tech industry and people who use cryptocurrencies at the moment, especially now stable coins, those people are extremely tech savvy, of course, and they can develop stuff extremely quickly. So, I think the complexity around payments is just going away
Mm,
by people simplifying on the blockchain versus, let's say, the difficulty of access that schemes and banks and traditional PSPs have built over the years, right? So the same complexities just aren't there on the blockchain. Whilst you have heightened transparency, way more security, no chargebacks, not a lot of fraud. I mean, obviously, given the people that own crypto historically, there can be obviously an anti-money laundering situation going on. So from an AML perspective or friendly fraud perspective, potentially there is that there. But I think if you look at credit card fraud, which is around 13 trillion a year as an industry, you've got to take that into account when you talk about fraud on the blockchain, right? So, A, I think it's a lot more accessible than it has been, and B, I think the kind of people who are building in the space are just simplifying it, and
Mm.
therefore the PSPs and the schemes don't have the same hold on the industry that they once had, right?
Two follow-up questions on that. You mentioned fraud there. I mean, obviously, as a new business, fraud trust is a key thing to build. How do you deal with that?
So we're still very much in our infancy at Damisa, right? So we are outsourcing these things. So very well-known companies. SumSub is one of them, right? For KYC, KYB onboarding. There's many, many, many of these companies out there now. It's just the one we've chosen for now, and we've got three different transaction monitoring tools for actually monitoring the transactions as they're happening. So we're going above and beyond to make sure that the money we're onboarding customers properly. We do chain analysis to make sure that the money that is in those wallets has not come from unscrupulous places, let's say, or PEP sanctioned people, what have you. So we're extremely careful because, again, back to the regulation risk, right? I think if people start doing these transactions, it's not hard to replicate a let's say a stablecoin transaction, right?
Mm.
Anybody can have a business to business crypto wallet, send out a payment request, and people can load up funds into a crypto wallet, right? Let's be honest. But to have licenses, we've got the Australian Financial Services license in Australia. We've got a virtual asset service provider license in Poland, a VASP. Gone for our EMI license. So doing it properly, AML checks, KYB checks, KYC checks on every single transaction is obviously what's going to hold the industry to a high standard and make sure it doesn't collapse due to regulatory issues, right? So from day one, we're doing it very, very properly.
Very good, very good. And I mean, we mentioned Stripe recently announced that their stable coins into 101 countries as well. Is there a risk, like you say, simplifying it, the technology can be replicated? What is the defensive moat that comes around it?
So I think the defensive mode is just specializing in certain areas, right? So again, Demis is really going after this escrow piece, which I think is extremely clunky and out of date. Um, we've recently done a deal with a very large property development company in Portugal. It's the biggest one. For example, this particular project they've given us is 43 million euros worth of real estate. Damisa will take the deposits into there. The properties won't be finished until 2008, maybe 2009, in which case we'd have taken deposits for their projects, and off the back of it, we'll be able to issue yield to the developers. So now they're making money out of their escrow service as well. So not only is the clunky escrow services where you've got to go through notaries every single time, you still have to go through notaries with us, but it's kind of on a royalty basis. You've done it once, you've programmed the money, you've got the smart contracts,
Yeah.
and then you can pay out the yield on the other end, which is extremely attractive for those guys. So to answer the question, I think our moat is going after this niche market, right? Spending time with the notaries, spending time with the real estate developers, um, and yeah, basically enabling those guys to advertise everywhere that they can now take stable coins as deposits, stable coins as payments for their properties. And again, I think anybody can go super broad in this market and just
Mm.
to try and do everything in the stablecoin payment space. But I think our whole moat is just we're going to really focus on one specific area, dominate the space, and then move on to the next one.
It's quite global in nature. I mean, I know there's big developments in the Middle East, in Dubai, around particularly around property and so on and so on. I mean, how do you access these customers? I mean, is it through networks? Is it through referrals? Is it just, yeah, pure outbound?
So a bit of so all of it, right?
Mm.
I've been in the space for quite some time. Again, the recruitment side of things, right? When you build a business in recruitment and it's focused on a niche, you kind of get to know everybody in the entire industry very, very quickly. Um, so that's been very useful. The other founders, we got Panos Dandalas, who was the global head of payments innovation at Agoda, which is the Booking.com company of Asia, and Max Merenbach, who was the very early employee of Kraken and their global head of payments for a while. So the knowledge in house is great. The network is huge, and then I think, look, when you're starting a business, you've only got to keep a certain amount of customers happy, right? They tell the rest of the customers, and before you know it, you've got a business in that space, which is
Yeah.
yeah. So that's what we're doing, right? Like you say, the network. We focus on a couple of companies, get it right, and as I say, I think I told you before, but in our pre-seed round, our first customer actually put £250,000 into our round, right? Because they wanted to use it. And their use case was payments in and out of Africa with these escrow accounts. So we've really built for those guys. We've built for this real estate business, and they're telling everybody. So it's spreading across the real estate world and these, let's say, Africa to Europe corridors like wildfire. It's spreading so fast we can't possibly keep up at this moment. We are hiring like mad, trying to build out and yeah, and service these customers, right? Which is great problem to have, but it's difficult. Yeah,
Well, we're keeping up with the demand.
yeah.
It's a good problem to have. Not every business has that. And how do you think about, obviously you've been in recruitment, you said Vault was up to 300 people. In the modern world where you've got AI agents, infrastructure, automation, etc., are you thinking differently about how you build the business and how you deal with that? And from early stages, maybe to later stages, I suppose yeah.
So I mean, you see at the moment the AI boom is happening as well, alongside the stablecoin boom. And 100%, I've been into the AI space for quite some time as well. I love the whole concept of automation, always have done. And the whole AI piece, for example, at Damisa, we are building anywhere we can. If we can use AI, we're using it, right? From sales to accounting to marketing, we are building AI first, right? So currently we're a company of 10 and probably doing the work of a historic company of 100, right?
Mm.
And I don't think we're unique in this. I think everybody's looking at it. I mean, you can see Klarna, they
Yep.
laid off thousands of people that were in their customer service department. Totally understandable. I think the balance is not quite there yet, to be honest, with AI. I think you still have to have a very good human approach. But I think a lot of work can be done from the robots and by using a lot of AI agency tools rather than doing it all yourself. So yeah, I think really, if we get to a company of 50, I think that's probably all we need. I hope.
And I suppose it's like you say, it's not there. It's finding that balance of, I suppose, the guardrails, the infrastructure, what you actually need compared to what's available, or you can build in time as well. Is that the challenge that you wrestle with?
When it comes to AI,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't know, right? We don't know what's next. It's moving so fast.
Mm.
Agentic AI, which is the talk of the town right now, is insane, right? You can program it and do what you want. Um, Cursor, which is a phenomenal tool, right? I mean, everybody, our development team, I say everybody, there's only two or three of them, they're all using Cursor, and the workload is ginormous what they can achieve with this one tool. So, I mean, I'm very conscious about the reality of it costing jobs. I
Mm.
think there's two arguments to this, right? People are saying, "Oh no, it's not going to cost any jobs, AI," but it's already costing jobs. People
Yep.
are being
100%.
fired by the day, and I think if one developer can do the work of 50 now, well, then you don't need 50 developers. Of course, it's costing jobs, right? So I'm very conscious of that fact contributing to a downward spiral economically versus building out a company. So yeah, we just don't know where it's going to go, right? I think we're trying to stay ahead of the curve and use it where we can,
Yeah.
but at the same time, yeah, we don't want to damage we don't want to contribute to the damage of the global economy.
And as you said earlier, someone who likes to, doesn't like want to get emotionally involved, build something, but feel free to walk away at the end. Do you build with the end in mind, some sort of value creation plan, some sort of exit strategy, right from where you are 3 months in?
You know what? People say that you should definitely build with the end in mind. I think if you take that attitude, there's obviously many ways of looking at it, but my way of looking at that is if you try and build with the end in mind, you've suddenly got this valuation in your mind that you want to sell for, or you want to exit valuation, and it becomes about the money.
Mm,
It's not about the money for me, absolutely not. And it was not a PCN, it was not a Vault. If we can build something, I've done quite a lot of psychometric tests, and I'm sure you have over the time. And it turns out I like to influence behavioral change, right? So I really love the fact that people are getting behind stablecoins, getting behind crypto, and we can make an impact on people's behavior as to how they pay around the world. I think the opportunity to help out markets that are, let's say, kept down because of the
mm,
current financial environment. Um, Africa, classic example. some of these transactions that are coming out of Ghana into Poland for one of our customers, um, they would have had to do 20 odd transactions to get the same amount across, right? At a cost of 12%. It inhibits business locally. Of course,
Yeah,
they're not going to do as well as their European counterpart.
yeah.
So now we come in, we can offer a fraction of the cost for the same transaction in one go, and not 20. So it makes a difference. In turn, because we can offer yield also on these accounts, this particular African client is storing a lot of money in the Damisa accounts, generating yield. So suddenly they actually have a bank account where before their bank was charging them a lot of money to have money sitting in their bank. So as long as we can build something which makes an impact, I think that's what we'll try and do. And I genuinely believe if you take that attitude and don't go in all in for the money, um, success will just happen. Someone will try and buy it. Look at the Bridge story when Stripe bought that. I know those founders as well. Bridge, they're fantastic guys, also trying to build to help the economy and help people move money around the world. Stripe comes in and buys them 2.5 years later for 1.1 billion. I mean, good for them, right? That's great. That's just a byproduct of living in the moment and trying to help the economy and the market.
Do you think there's an element of, don't want to go down the route of politics, but there's an element of the world's been more protectionist, almost trying to kind of create more barriers between different countries and continents. But actually, in an AI native world, there's a lot more global nature. You're talking about cross-border payments all of a sudden being much easier, quicker, and cheaper. People are able to move money around that actually it can bring new funding to traditional markets in a way.
Absolutely. I mean, if you take again the African continent in general, right? The amount of corruption, as I'm sure we all know, that has gone on from traditional money being sent into banks, unfortunately, in some of these countries, where some of it's siphoned off to other things. Like, now again with the blockchain technology, you can see where the money's coming from, you can see where it came from, you see where it's going, you can see if there's any corruption, it will be easily exposed. So money which is being sent for these projects, to your point, investment into projects or investment into new companies in emerging markets, is a lot safer. So yeah, absolutely. I think the blockchain itself opens up opportunity for those markets where traditional rails didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the name Damisa obviously seems very appropriate because obviously, if you've got so much work coming to you, speed of execution is key as well. Uh, how do you manage that with wife, family? Because we all know there's no balance when it comes to building business.
Yeah, no, it's
Um,
very difficult. Yeah.
I'm curious, how do you survive that? Because that's challenging.
So look, when I set out Vault, yeah. So when I started Vault, let's go back there, 2019. The day we started Vault, my daughter was born, my first child. Then we had the COVID. So I was at home for 2 years working out
Yeah.
of my bedroom. That was quite good. I spent a lot of time with my daughter, in and out of the bedroom, let's say, where I was working from. Um, and then, things got, when the COVID ended, I was traveling around like a madman in and out of London, all over the place. We went to Australia, but I took the whole family, so that was good. Um, and now I took up, I think, 3 months off before
Mm.
starting Damisa, which again I was able to spend time with the family. But now it's kind of back to working all hours and not spending that much time with the family. So to your point, it's a very, very difficult balance. Weekends, I try and spend with the family. Obviously, evenings as much as possible. And I'm just trying. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I try to be at the breakfast table every day, like 7:30, um, for half an hour or an hour, and then crack on. So yeah, it's hard to balance. I don't think there is a proper answer to it, but all we can do is, I think, do our best, right? In those 3 months off, to be fair, I found myself working for my wife anyway. So, either I go back to work and do something else, or I continue working in the family. So, yeah,
Brilliant,
much of a
brilliant.
much.
Yeah. Obviously, you raised money as well. I know, your success with Vault helped with that kind of sort of pre-seed. Do you see a lot of pressure from investors to go super, super quickly? Well, I mean, we've seen some of the growth trajectories of AI companies, like the hockey stick is even steeper these days. Is there always an expectation now that it's going to continue like that for a Damita type business?
I think all the venture capitalists are trying to find the next Google or the next Uber or the next Netflix, whatever the big ones were. And so I always think there's a bit of pressure for sure. But look, they normally get behind a team that they really believe in. I don't think many investors invest in anything else apart from the team. So yeah, I like to think I've got a good track record from the previous companies. The team that have come in on the project are phenomenal. I've got an amazing background. So I think we don't feel as much pressure because we've got the feeling we've kind of done it before, right?
Mm.
So, and I think they think, okay, our money's in safe hands because these guys have done it before. They've seen some of the challenges, and they trust that we'll do it again. Um, so I think the pressure is not as bad as kind of, let's say, a first-time founder just starting out, where the venture capital companies are just like, okay, where's my monthly report? Where's my hockey stick revenue? Yeah. That said, I mean, Damisa is off to an amazing start. So yeah, I think everything is up and to the right. So hopefully we're keeping them happy. But also it's who you choose as a VC, as an investor, right? I
Mm.
think a lot of them do want to get involved, and then sit there at the board meetings and kind of advise what you should be doing. The reality is, I can say this, very honestly, not all of them know what it's like to build a business, right? A lot of them have never actually started a business themselves or done anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think it's super important to choose your company that invests in you, which has either people who have started businesses before
Mhm.
that you can lean on for advice, right? Which in the case of Damisa, we have such an investor, or a company which says, okay, we trust you, we've invested in the team, we're here if you need us, but we don't really know what we're doing in terms of building a company. So off you go and do it and let us know when it's a success,
Mm.
But we have a nice balance at Damisa for sure.
And in that scenario where they're more hands off and they haven't got that operator experience, do you look to build, because I know you advise and invest in other businesses as well. Do you look to build your own advisory board and try and have that resource there to that sounding board for yourself?
Absolutely. That was super crucial. And Vault was the same, right? So given the network of PCN,
Mm.
Um, we had Gabrielle de Montessus, who's the president of WellPay at the moment, on the board. Robert Crowell, one of the founders of Adyen, came along as our chairman. These are all people that I knew from a long time, back from the PCN days. And the same as the Misa now. If we were recording this podcast a week later, then I'd be able to tell you who they are. But we've got a phenomenal team of advisors coming on board. I'll be able to announce it next week.
Yeah.
But yeah, really amazing. And I think that's super important because the market changes all the time. The fintech industry is such that there's a lot of frenemies in there. So people that
Mm.
are working with each other, everybody has an overview of everything else. So you can't possibly know what's going on all the time in your own little niche. So I think it's really important to have that board of advisors, and also the fintech space, given as it is. Again, everybody knows everybody. So if you have the right advisor, your company can 10x,
Mm.
20x, 30x because of their network as well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is great. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I've always said in recruitment, we sit in a unique position outside of organizations with a view into all these different businesses, and it gives great perspective. So you can get outside of those four walls. On that point, when you look at the fintech industry in Europe, who do you see as, has a lot of potential to really, businesses that have a lot of potential to do something great against the big guys?
Yeah, so I think obviously I'm a bit biased. So I think some of these companies in the blockchain space or the stablecoin space at the moment, I think honestly it's an enormous opportunity right now. Purely because yeah, you've got stablecoin based companies that are focusing only on the stablecoin piece that are going after the same industries as the traditional payment
Mm.
service providers, the traditional acquirers, um, and the traditional payment companies. So the opportunity is, I think, to become a problem for those bigger companies, a bit like, well, actually, Bridge was not a problem for Stripe, but my point is, and get bought by those payment
Mm.
companies, right? Um, who are a little bit scared that you might disrupt their business. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. And in terms of, and aside from that, I think the neobanks, right? So you've got Revolut obviously done really, really well in globally now. New bank coming out of Brazil.
Yeah.
I think so. There's these extremely fast-moving banks that are neobanks that are able to offer services that the traditional banks aren't, let alone at the same speed. I think that's a really interesting space as well. There's a company in the Netherlands called Go Dutch. Of course,
Hmm.
it's a Dutch neobank. I don't know if you've seen these guys. Tom Fless, I think his name is. Super smart guy building out a neobank there. And again, the speed they're moving at, the things they're able to offer, are the same as traditional banks can offer, but maybe you earn more interest on your deposits. You can immediately spin up a new debit card. You can freeze your card, open up your card. These little things that have traditionally been a problem with the big banks. Nobody wants to work with the big banks anymore. So the speed that people are signing up to neobanks today is just insane.
Yeah.
So I think you got the two things. Obviously, I'm a bit biased on the blockchain side, so I think the stablecoin companies, the sea is very blue, and the neobanks the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Final question then. If you were to give some advice to your younger self based on the experiences that you've had, what would you tell a 15, 16-year-old Jordan?
If you have an idea, just do it. Just plow in. It sounds a bit cliche, right? But what you see in a lot of businesses, and still now, I spoke to people who have gone down the perfectionism route,
Mm.
and I always allude to the analogy of the train waiting to leave the station, right? So the train is late, everybody's panicking, are they going to get to work on time? And the reason it's late is because it's a fancy train and everyone's waiting for the gold taps in the toilet, right? Don't wait for the gold taps. Nothing has to be perfect. Build. I think, isn't it like jump off a cliff and build the business on the way down? People
Yeah.
say
Well,
that's it, right?
it's building the plane while flying. Yeah.
That's yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Build a plane while flying. Yeah, and so that's it. Really, I really stand by that. I think you have to build. Just go for it. People will tell you if it's right. People will tell you if it's wrong, and start iterating around a very basic product. Right. Yeah, that would be my advice.
And it's even easier now with AI. You can just start cracking on and it's just spinning stuff up. I've been playing with it in
Isn't it
my free
scary?
time. It's madness.
It's madness. So everyone's going to just have their own business built on AI basically in 5 years, right?
Where are
Yeah.
the consumers going to come from? That's the question.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the recruitment space, right? Where do you see the whole market going in terms of employment and this AI bits
I
and
mean,
pieces?
look,
Yeah,
there's been a theme around productivity, doing more with less for some time. In fact, in some ways, I see some of the more established and legacy businesses having bigger issues in trying to evolve and adapt because they've got legacy systems and the old idea of garbage in, garbage out. My brother-in-law works in AI and big data, and their business is very acquisitive. So you've got all these different systems. Getting stuff into it is going to take some time, but it's going to evolve and change things. But for me, it's actually a move that I've championed for a long time. It's going to move away from being an inch wide and a mile deep in terms of skill sets into someone that can oversee multiple workflows and functions, that understands how different things interplay together, almost overseeing agents or overseeing business, which is a skill set a lot of people don't have. It goes away from the old Adam Smith division of labor type mentality, which was industrial revolution type stuff. So it'll be interesting, but change brings opportunity is my mantra.
agree. But in your space, are people still hiring like crazy, or are they?
I mean, it's been more sporadic. It's been challenging
Uh,
in different fields, but we're seeing a lot of the businesses I work with are investor backed. So it's been, is the money flowing through to the markets? And uncertainty has been the blockage for them really. So we're seeing that evolve and unlock, but that uncertainty is the challenge that people are facing.
okay, yeah, got it. Yeah, no, useful.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, Jordan, thank you so much for joining me for this. Really appreciate it. Fascinating conversation. Excited to watch Demisa's growth trajectory.
Thank you for the invite. Thanks for the opportunity.